Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Rumble in the Jungle, 1974. Hi. Well, politically in the United States, the last 4 or 5 weeks have just been a whirlwind. Since Joe Biden stepped down and Kamala mania started to sweep throughout the nation, Donald Trump is stumbling around, babbling at his speeches and his rallies. The dynamics of the election have been changed, and we're actually watching history. So I'm making this. It's really just a cute little video. What I'm going to say and talk about will make a lot more sense to boomers and those my age than to millennials and Gen Zs, because we're going to talk about Muhammad Ali. We're going to talk about things that happened back in the 1970s and how they relate or might relate to what's going on right now. By the way, you millennials and Gen Zs, come on, take 5 minutes, watch this. You may enjoy it. I'm a 70-year-old making content on YouTube, but yeah, I've known a thing or two, and I've got a thought that may add some value to you. So listen, let's move ahead and talk about this because I'm just fascinated by what's gone on. And let's go. Let's go back 2 months. Things were shaping up for a Joe Biden-Donald Trump election in November, and the American public just was not terribly thrilled with it. Biden's approval ratings were not high. Trump's approval ratings were lower. By the polls, Trump was marginally ahead, largely because of his dedicated core of 35% his base. Even amongst Democrats, they were not excited by Joe's candidacy. The reason Joe Biden was there is he's kind of made it his life goal to stop Donald Trump and make sure he doesn't get the presidency again. Donald Trump, well, it's all he knows. If he doesn't become president, he's probably going to jail. And that's the end of his career. Come on, he's 78 years old. He hasn't got a lot ahead of him. So he's doing what he thinks he can do, and he loved the power. When he was president, he couldn't believe it. He was the most powerful man in the world. And only near the end did he realize how much he could get away with. And he wants the last kick of the bucket to get out there and see what he can do and cement his legacy. Maybe he's a madman and dictator, but he wants in. He knows what power is, and he's power hungry. So then came the June 27th Biden-Trump debate hosted by CNN. And it was horrible, or it looked horrible for Joe Biden. He looked frail. He seemed unsure of himself. His voice was weak. He was overwhelmed by Trump's energy. Trump's loudness and aggressiveness just took over the room. Mind you, Trump himself was making up lies and saying inconsistent things. Biden's weakness was so obvious that everybody seemed to think that was it. He's finished. Trump wins. And the world and the polls tended to reflect that afterwards. Now, there are some academic debate watchers who actually said Biden did okay and better than Trump as far as making his points. But that doesn't matter. Perceptions are what matter, not debating techniques or not points you've made. The debate was followed by a few weeks of concern and anxiety, as maybe Joe Biden really couldn't beat Donald Trump. And maybe Donald Trump was on his way to a second term. So there's a lot of debate. Should Joe step down or not? Now, Joe finally did about 3-4 weeks after the debate, announced that he was stepping down, and Kamala stepped in. And we've all seen what happened since then. There's a new energized Democratic campaign. Trump is confused. His campaign doesn't know what to do. They're in disarray. I think one of the things that's happened is that they really did not expect Biden to step aside. Trump can't understand unselfish acts of people where they stand out of the way to do what they believe is in the best interest of the country, as opposed to for them personally. It's not in his world. He doesn't understand it. I also think that Trump and his campaign expended all their energy, used it all up trying to knock out Joe Biden, not realizing that once he's knocked out, you're going to have nothing left to take on whoever is the eventual contender. And as I heard that, I started to think to myself, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Rumble in the Jungle, 1974. So, now we get around to the point of this video. And as obscure and cryptic as it may seem, And I've taken a long route getting around to the point. I'm 70 years old. It's YouTube, and what the heck, I can do things like that. The point of it is, I found a rather enigmatic connection between Muhammad Ali and one of his greatest fights ever, and the situation that I see in the 2024 election. Muhammad Ali was arguably one of the greatest fighters of all time, boxer. He got into some trouble in the 1970s when he refused the draft. He did not want to go to Vietnam, and he had his titles, his world championship, stripped away from him by the authorities. Made a comeback a few years later, but he was well on in years. He ended up winning his title back against George Foreman, who was a much younger, arguably much more talented boxer, and he did it with a really unorthodox methodology, a really unorthodox technique that had never been seen before, something that became known as the rope-a-dope. The central idea is that you taunt your opponent into using all their resources up so that they're defenseless. They have nothing left to defend themselves with because they've expended them all trying to get to you. And I see a connection between the Trump campaign, the way they went after Biden and the way they were ready to go and how excited they were when they beat him in the debate. And, basically it was a rope-a-dope. I mean, basically they expended all their resources, left with nothing to defend themselves with. And now you've got Kamala Harris running away with it. So yeah, I know it's pretty obscure and it's quite a stretch, but I'm here to tell you about it, and I'm going to carry on. And if you pay, hopefully you pay attention and enjoy it. Thank you. I'm going to let Wikipedia tell us all about Muhammad Ali and George Foreman's famous Rumble in the Jungle. Then we'll get back to talking about it next of Biden-Trump. Ali's defeat of Joe Frazier set the stage for a title fight against heavyweight champion George Foreman in Zaire, now the Republic of Congo, on October 30th, 1974. A bout that was nicknamed the Rumble in the Jungle. Foreman was considered one of the hardest punchers in heavyweight history. In assessing the fight, analysts pointed out that Joe Frazier and Ken Norton, who had given Ali 4 tough battles and won 2 of them, had both been devastated by Foreman in second-round knockouts. Ali was now 32 years old and had lost speed and reflexes since his 20s. Contrary to his later persona, Foreman was at the time a brooding and intimidating presence. Almost no one associated with the sport, not even Ali's longtime supporter Howard Cosell, gave the former champion a chance of winning. Ali opened the fight, moving and scoring with right crosses to Foreman's head. Then, beginning in the second round, and to the consternation of his corner, Ali retreated to the ropes and invited Foreman to hit him while covering up, clinching, and counter-punching, all the time verbally taunting Foreman. The move, which would later become known as the rope-a-dope, so violated conventional boxing wisdom, letting one of the hardest hitters in boxing strike at will, that at ringside, writer George Plimpton thought the fight had to be fixed. Foreman, increasingly angered, threw punches that were deflected and did not land squarely. Midway through the fight, as Foreman began tiring, Ali countered more frequently and effectively with punches and flurries, which electrified the pro-Ali crowd. In the 8th round, Ali dropped an exhausted Foreman with a combination at center ring. Foreman failed to make the count. Against all odds and amidst pandemonium in the ring, Ali had regained the title by knockout. Reflecting on the fight, George Foreman later said, "I thought Ali was just one more knockout victim until about the 7th round. I hit him hard in the jaw, and he held me and whispered in my ear, 'That's all you got, George?' I realized that this ain't what I thought it was." It was a major upset victory after Ali came into the fight as a 4-1 underdog against the previously unbeaten, heavy-hitting Foreman. The fight became famous for Ali's introduction of the rope-a-dope tactic. The fight was watched by a record-estimated television audience of 1 billion viewers worldwide. It was the world's most watched live television broadcast at the time. So, I'm going to leave you all here today watching George Foreman, Donald Trump, trying his very best to pound Muhammad Ali, Joe Biden, into submission, to the point that he expends every ounce of energy he has and has absolutely nothing left to defend himself. Now, does that apply to the elections this year? I don't know, but I see an obscure connection.